Right, everyone, with the FPL season just one day away, 2023, I thought I'd do a quick run through of my team, some of the options I think that are good value. The team you'll see on screen is my current team. It is slightly different to what it was this morning. I initially had Anthony Martial, where Ivan Toney is. Rashford was replaced with Said Benrahma, and then I had Cucurella here in the Mitchell spot. Cucurella, I think, is a good pickup to get when you can at the moment, because if he gets his transfer through to Man City or Chelsea and plays regularly, he'll be worth a lot more points than he is at Brighton, especially if he does get that wing-back role at either club. There is rumour that if he goes to Chelsea, he'll be playing at left centre-back because he can play there, but that would lower his points as a fullback. I always think your defence, personally, should always be entirely fullbacks because you get that added bonus of assists and you'd still get the same clean sheet as if you had a centre-back. So I'll just go through the team I've got now and I'll show you some of the options that I think of really good value or good options to have that I've got in my watch list to the side. So I've got Danny Ward and Edison as my goalies. Edison will play most weeks. For me, as a team, he'll always be starting for Man City and he's generally guaranteed points. Ward is due to the fact that Schmeichel's leaving Leicester, and Brendan Rodgers has been quoted as saying that Ward is a first choice keeper. He will be their first choice, and that he's good enough to do it at this level. Even if he's not, having a 4 million keeper, which is the lowest value, that will play, especially if he ends up playing week in, week out, is a really good option to have, which is why I've gone for that. It saved money for me to spread through the team. As I said, Mitchell was sort of a last minute addition to the squad. Mitchell, I personally will probably switch out, even though Palace I think are a really good defensive team, so I'm considering keeping him. But I can also switch him out for one of the West Ham fullbacks, which match really well with Aït-Nouri. The first 8 games, Wolves' 2 tough games or 3 tough games are Spurs and then game week 7 and 8. So you could either ride out having a Wolves defender for Spurs and then just drop that defender for the 2 tougher weeks. Or if you have a West Ham one, they dovetail really nicely. So you can take your 4.5 defender from West Ham out for a Wolves one and vice versa. Lots of people are talking about Kufal and Johnny. I personally think Semedo and Aït-Nouri will be the starting pair. First week it will be Johnny and Aït-Nouri because of Semedo's injury. Alexander-Arnold is pretty much a must-have. He's been the highest point scorer, I think, 2 years. He's always the highest scoring defender, and he's just guaranteed clean sheets and assist points. Nico Williams has completed his move from Liverpool to Nottingham Forest. This makes him a 4 million value because he was valued as a Liverpool player who wouldn't play, who will now probably be a starting right wing back every week for Forest. Whether Williams will be able to adapt to it exactly and whether Forest will have any clean sheets is still yet to be seen, but a 4 million defender who plays every week is good value. And he doesn't have as much competition at Nottingham Forest because Spence, the right back, has already left. He was on loan, he's not made a permanent move, and he's now at Tottenham. Speaking of Tottenham, we'll come on to Perisic. Perisic will be playing left wing back for Spurs. Their last pre-season game of pre-season, he made 75 minutes. Generally, that game shows what the starting 11 will be for the first game of the season. It's not always guaranteed, but generally that's how managers use it as sort of a trial run. So if he's getting 75 minutes there, he's probably getting a similar amount in first game of the season, which would be enough to get him the clean sheet bonus for being on the pitch. I saw a stat somewhere that if he had been in the Premier League last season, with his tally from Serie A, he'd have been the same sort of points as Alexander-Arnold. So getting him in for 2 million left, even if there is a drop-off in his ability due to age or moving leagues, he could still show really good value at 5.5. And if not, you can drop him and be able to spread the money even like around the team because there are some really good value options in defence this year. Salah's much like Alexander-Arnold. I personally am a Wolves fan, but some players you just need to have, and unfortunately we've got to have 2 of the Liverpool players. Salah is always one of the highest point scorers. There's not a lot of competition in the Liverpool side for him, although they've got a lot of forwards. His side, the right side, is very much just sort of him. Darwin Núñez plays centre on the left. Diogo Jota is the same. And Luis Diaz has mainly been a left-sided player, which means Salah on the right is pretty much covered. His support is probably sort of one of the youth players, like Harvey Elliott, potentially, so he'll be playing pretty much every game. I've got Marcus Rashford in now. Man U under Ten Hag have been playing well. Till about a week ago, I didn't have a single Man U player in because I didn't like the squad, didn't believe in how they'll play, and I'm still not massively hopeful, but their attack has been firing, and with Rashford and Martial so cheap, it made sense to take a risk on them. As I said, I had Martial in until this morning when his injury was announced, so I switched him out for Rashford and Ivan Toney instead of Fornals and Martial up front. Saint Maximin he's the main creative outlet for Newcastle at all times. Anytime Newcastle players are scoring points, Saint Maximin is probably also getting points for the goal or the assist. He's just an easy one to have for 6.5, someone who's involved in pretty much everything his team will do. It's a good shout. The same with Jade Moore-Prowse. Most things that happen at Saints go through him, and with his set pieces being on free kicks that he scores regularly and penalties a lot of the time, he's worth having in the team for those extra assists or goals. And again, we'll play every minute for them because they just don't have the depth of squad or the experience to not play him, and he is club captain. Pedro Neto could be the bargain of the season. If he plays as well as he's been playing in pre-season for Wolves in the Prem, he's looking at over double figures for 5.5 mil. Always playing forward, almost plays like a forward nowadays. So the value you could get out of him could be amazing. I've got a lot of hope for him. And Aït-Nouri as well is a really good attacking left back. Loves getting forward, loves getting involved. Is always happy to try and take on a shot if it's there or get an assist. For 4.5 again, he feels like a no-brainer for me as long as it doesn't end up being Semedo-Johnny as the starting pair, but then you can switch Johnny in. They're the same value and it's equally as good. I think Jesus from his pre-season and just how good he's been at City. He's been underrated. Why he wasn't there starting centre forward last season, all season, I don't know. With the lack of an out-and-out number 9, he was just so good. And he started really well for Arsenal. I really like how Mikel Arteta plays. He knows Jesus from his time at City, and I think the partnership's going to be really well. The amount of forwards they have, having that recognised scorer. When Nketiah is getting that many goals, Jesus is a better player than Nketiah. He's bound to score goals, and if it ends up being Nketiah's leading the line, Jesus is playing wide, or you think that Nketiah is better, Nketiah is a million less, and you're more than welcome to put him in. But I'm sure Jesus, the money they paid and the quality of player he is, will be starting week in, week out, and consistent points. We'll jump straight over to Haaland. Man City finally having a focal point up front, someone who will really be up there and stay for all these sort of things. I felt he was a must to have in my team. I thought about De Bruyne in the midfield, but then the striker options are a lot weaker than the midfield options this season, and with how Haaland performs in the Bundesliga and how Man City play, he'd give another dimension. He could be so good. If you don't want Haaland because you've got other plans at forward, I'd suggest potentially either De Bruyne as the obvious option or Riyad Mahrez. There's less competition for that right side of the City midfield again. So he's the more expensive out of the options, but there's less competition on that side. Whereas the other side, you've got Foden and Grealish both competing to get that left-sided spot. And Mahrez has that right pretty much all to himself at the moment. Even Alvarez, the striker, can play striker or on that left-hand side. So you get a lot more. You'll get more guaranteed minutes, I'd say, out of Riyad Mahrez than the other options. But KDB will always be a starter for them. I've picked Ivan Toney here after the Martial injury, as I said. I mainly had Martial here and not Rashford in the mid because there are, again, nicer midfield options, especially at the price points. Like, there's a lot of good 6 and 6.5 midfielders. There's not that many good 7 mil strikers. The standout options for me are Toney is a good one. Then Martial is, if he continues to play up front for this Man U and they play how they have in pre-season, he's a really good option. And I at one point had Raul Jimenez. He is injured and will be out 4 to 8 weeks of the season, so that's why he dropped out for me. But Ivan Toney is a good shout. Again, everything that goes through Brentford, he'll be involved in. And then I've got sort of some honourable mentions at the side. So in my wish list on this side, I've got my goalkeepers, and I watch listed a few. Sarr, Ramsdale and Pope, I think, are just all good shouts. Wolves have notoriously been a strong defensive side, but lacking going forward. We are changing into a 4 at the back system this year, which might cost some of the defensive work, but in pre-season it worked really well, and Sarr is an incredible stopper. The back line in front of him will still be solid, and I've still got good hopes that he'll get a lot of points this season at 5 million. As you can see, he beat the other two out last season. Nick Pope in the new back line of a new look Newcastle, with Guimaraes running in midfield in front of him, Botman in the back now with Byrne. It should be a solid season for Newcastle. A good defence. Nick Pope's always been an excellent keeper and is guaranteed points. Same with Arsenal. The team that's been built there is good. Midfield is a little light, especially if they're missing Thomas Partey after the allegations that I'm not going to go into here. If he's not playing, they'll be weaker. You'd hope he's not playing with the allegations going, but I have a feeling he will be, which means Ramsdale is a good choice, and the defensive options in front of him are good as well. Then I've got my sort of defender options. So Digne, if Aston Villa get off to a good start, they have quite a good early run in. At 5 million, he'll get assists and goals generally. Digne, set pieces, so he's usually quite a good option to have. Walker Peters, if Saints start out as they usually do, quite a good defensive side. At 4.5, he's quite attacking. He's been priced low because of an injury last season, meaning he missed a chunk of it. And he's bound to play because they are missing fullbacks. Livramento will be out till the end of the year at least, I believe. Tomiyasu, a cheap way into the Arsenal defence. 4.5 mil. He does play fullback, but he's a very defensive one, so he's less likely to get your assists. But if you're just looking for 4.5 and some clean sheets, Tomiyasu could be a way to go. Lamptey again, another one that I feel was lowballed on price because of an injury last season. Anyone who had him his first season breakout in the Prem knows that at 4 million he was the deal of the season. So many assists before his injury. That whole season he was excellent to have, and I think he went from 4 million all the way up to 5 by the end. Kufal I've got here, as I mentioned, they dovetail really nicely with Wolves. So I think West Ham, especially with a Skamaka potentially up front, leading the line, a bigger sort of target man, even though he does play more in behind the lines, I think you can expect more points from the West Ham fullbacks. I always feel like they've strengthened as a team overall, and that will improve their defensive solidity, which will get more clean sheet points. Zinchenko is here because if he starts in the midfield for Arsenal, as I said, I think that will do quite well this season, and that could be a lot of points from defence. And Tierney is injured at the moment, I believe, and very injury prone, so he will get minutes, you'd assume, at left back or in the middle of the park. Midfield options, there's quite a few. Jared Bowen, I really like, and I really liked last season. I think he's a really high quality player. But the 8.5 price, although I don't know, with Skamaka now up front leading, if Jared Bowen drops into a more reserved role, I don't know if he'll get as many points this season. But he's a good pick, and I'm sure if you're a West Ham fan, he'll be first in the team sheet. I can see why people would have him, and if he starts off well and he is playing right up front, he could be a good one to get. James Maddison was injured for part of last season and still got this point total. He's a really good player, really solid. Especially if he stays at Leicester, he'll be the only one there. The only issue is Leicester squad is weak defensively. I wouldn't advise any Leicester defenders at current. I think the team is weak and they will concede goals. I know I have Ward in the team, but as I expressed, it's because he is 4 million. That's the reason he's there, not any other reason. I've got Mason Mount because he is the most nailed on Chelsea starter. I'm not sure how Chelsea will line up at the moment with their forward situation. I don't see Timo Werner doing it, so potentially Kai Havertz as an 8 million forward could be good. It just depends on how confident you are with Chelsea. I know a lot of people have put Sterling in, but again, I just personally don't enjoy the Chelsea forwards. Although I know Sterling will score goals, I feel like he's always been very much a poacher, and I don't know how fluid that Chelsea attack is going to be, and if those chances will be coming for him. So I'd rather have a Mason Mount who is getting more assists, potentially the goals. I think he's the better option out of the ones. Zaha is always a classic choice. I think Palace will be good this season, and he's always a decent amount of points for a medium sort of price range. I haven't got him in because at 7, I think he's slightly priced out. The difference from 7 to the 8 is small enough that I'd consider just switching him in. And there's so many good 6.5 options that I just don't know if that extra 5 is worth it for Zaha. I think Ward Prowse and St Maximan both finished above him on points last season. Ben Rama is a cheap way into West Ham. Like I say, I think they've strengthened well and they'll be a good team to have. And Fornals, again, is the same reason. I think they've strengthened with a more clear focal point, and Mark Noble leaving the club. Both of these two will probably see increased minutes, which will be good for them and good for their scores overall. Ramsey is in here, as I mentioned. Villa have quite a nice start, and at 5.5 he's cheap. He plays really well. I've seen drills of him in pre-season where he's shooting a lot more, scoring, so it looks like he'll be playing a more advanced role. And anyone who saw him at the end of last season can see he's a big talent and going to do good things. Kulusevski is the cheapest way into the Spurs sort of front line, and he's still a midfielder. I think Richarlison might be classed as a striker. I'm not 100% sure on that, but he is definitely 8.5, so it's more expensive than Kulusevski, and I don't know which one of them will start. That's the main thing keeping Kulusevski out of my squad, because if Richarlison is starting more games over him, because they did pay a large sum, then, or they're being heavily rotated, then it can impact your points. Obviously, the ideal midfielder to have is Son, but you can only have a certain amount of premiums, and I picked Mo Salah for that one. Bruno Guimaraes will play every game. He joined halfway through Newcastle's season and made 67 points, which would put him up here near Ben Rama's sort of number of attacking midfielder numbers from centre midfield. He's a good option to have again at that 6 million price point. If you have 6 million to spare, I think Newcastle will improve this season. So I always think it's an okay idea to have a couple of their players. But if you can get the extra 5 million, St Maximan is the one to have. Luis Diaz is much similar to Kulusevski. He is the cheapest way into that Liverpool front, 4 to 5. Firmino, I think, will be getting way reduced minutes. Jota and Darwin, I think Darwin Núñez will be splitting that striker role and some time on the left-hand side. Mo Salah, I said, will claim that right-hand side most of the season. Luis Diaz will be left wing, sort of alternating between him, Jota, and Darwin Núñez. Bailey's in here for the same reason Ramsey is. Very cheap. He's had a really good pre-season, and there's a lot of hype around him at the moment. Because there's so much hype, I don't know if he gives you enough differentials, so if he's worth the gamble. But if you have 5 million to spend, it looks like he'll be starting for Gerrard, and it looks like he's left for a good attacking season. Eze came off an injury last season. I think he'll play a really big part for Palace this season, who I only think are going to improve under a quality manager. So I've got a lot of faith in them. I really like Patrick Vieira, and I think they could be a really good attacking side with Eze and Elise both back fit to start this season, and another year of Edouard bedding in. Morgan Gibbs-White is here because I think he could be really crucial to Wolves. He's definitely one to watch. He's the same price point as Pedro Neto. He's been playing in the middle of sort of the cam position between Neto and opponents on either side, with Raul Jimenez in front. With the Jimenez injury, I'd pick Neto because there's less focal point for Gibbs-White to pass to. But Gibbs-White, I think, had over 20 goal involvements last season, something like 18 goals, 9 assists, something crazy in the Championship across all matches. He looked really good for Wolves in pre-season. He's been taking excellent, just one-touch passing, laying off, and it's just been so fluid, so key, and he's really favoured by the manager. I've got Watkins in here because I feel like anything that happens at Villa will be going through him. They did strengthen well, but I have my reservations about Steven Gerrard. If Watkins was at 7 million, he'd have gone in to this team over Ivan Toney. I don't want Danny Ings because I think Watkins is the first choice. And the difference for me between Watkins and Ivan Toney isn't enough to take 4.5 out of somewhere else on my team just to get him in for this sort of first week or two, especially sort of with the fixtures. I think, like I say, Leicester's defence will be very weak this season. So I could see them conceding to Brentford. I could see it actually being quite a rut, that game, and it being sort of 4 goals from Brentford to Leicester's maybe 1. And Aston Villa do have Bournemouth start of the season. Bournemouth looks set to have an absolutely horrible season. Scott Parker's come out to say how weak the squad is, how they're, with injuries especially, they're down on where they were 3 months ago. it looks a torrid time for Bournemouth. And if I could get Watkins in, I would, but the sacrifice somewhere else in the team I don't think is worth it. I keep toying with Mitchell out for any 4 million player for now, bring in Watkins and correct it later on, which I keep looking at doing, and I might end up doing because I do know they have that favourable run. In fact, live on air, we'll do it live. We'll get Watkins in, and we will get a 4 mil defender. I actually have one in mind for this because, as I said, I've been toying with this. There are a few options. I wouldn't go for any of these with the odd few points. Brandon Williams maybe, because Ten Hag is going to have to work out who his starting right back is, because he doesn't apparently like Wan-Bissaka. He's already let Tellez go on the left, so just be sure. And then it's looking like maybe Dalot Shaw to start the season. Valerie got some minutes for Saints. I don't think he'll get any more. Totti is a good choice for Wolves, but I don't see him starting the season. For me, the standout would be Patterson. I don't think he'll play. I want to put that across. I do not think he will start, but he has started a fair few of their games in pre-season. So there's more potential of a Patterson start, I'd say, than any of the other 4 defenders. So in they go, make those transfers, confirm. They said Aston Villa's got some favourable starting game weeks. It could be a nice choice to have them. Go back to this list now. Oh, and then back to my watch list. We'll have a look. Edouard is here for the same reasons I said before. He's a strong attacking option. I really think Palace will push on this season, and at his price point, if he is leading the line, he was rotating last season with Benteke and Mateta. If he's leading the line for Palace this season, all season, I think that those points could easily be closer to the numbers we're seeing from Watkins there, the sort of 131 mark. I only think that Palace team will improve, like especially going forward, especially with Vieira as the manager. I really like him. I think he really improved the side. I feel like they will be hit by the loss of Conor Gallagher, but they have been looking at options and bringing people in, so hopefully they can get that resolved. And potentially, if Tuchel doesn't look like he's using him, maybe a late bid to bring Gallagher back on loan for this season as well. We'll have to see how that goes. Jimenez, I think this will be a much better attacking season for Wolves. The last 2 seasons have been dreadful to watch, but I think this could be a much, much better season, and he will be the focal point for that. At the moment, Wolves don't have another striker. Fabio Silva is on loan, which I think will be an excellent loan for him. I think he'll just tear it up in the Belgian league and come back and be an absolute monster for Wolves next season. When you watch him play, you can see why Wolves paid 35 million for him. Inacho or Daka, depending which one ends up being the obvious starter for Leicester. If it does remain being Jamie Vardy, I don't see the value. He's got to, as much as people have been saying this every year, he's got to have a downturn eventually. And at the price point he is, I just think you're better spreading your money. I think when it comes to a premium asset, I don't think Jamie Vardy gives you the value you want, especially with how Leicester look. No transfers yet this season. I think they'll struggle to be building anything from the back. It will have to be just sort of a hoof it and play. Wilson, Newcastle have invested well. The squad looks good. Creativity is still not 100% there, but they do give you good options. Wilson will be starting every week, and he's always been consistent goals. Whenever he's fit in the league, he's been good goals. Adam Armstrong is here because of the value, and I do think Saints have recruited quite well. Lots of young players, so we'll have to see how they gel and how they deal with coming to the Premier League, and that sort of thing. But they do look like they could do something this season. And I do think Adam Armstrong looked really good in the Championship the year before, and that he could maybe rediscover some of that form. And Martial, again, for a Man U asset, if he's going to play up front every week, he could be a good option. He's looked really good in pre-season. And then a couple of the backup options I've got Skamaka, if he takes off for West Ham. Could be a really nice option to get in early as a differential. A focal point for that West Ham side, who have been doing well the last couple of years, could really get the points. Patterson, we've just seen, I've switched in. I explained my logic behind that. And Botman, again, is a cheap way into a Newcastle backline that I think will be quite good this year. And then Aribo is just sort of a rogue one. He's performed really well in pre-season. He's just one to keep an eye on in case he does blow up this season. Andreas Pereira, is so cheap because he was priced as a Man U midfielder who is nowhere near the first team before his move to Fulham. At Fulham, I think he'll be playing most weeks, if not every week. So even then, you get the play time for him at 4.5 and any goals or assists because he'll be playing and in an advanced position. The price they sort of paid and the fact they've just come up, I think he'll be starting. I think he might be starting as sort of on the right midfield or right wing, where he's been playing the last sort of season or so for Fulham. And then Tom Cairney, because the last time Fulham were up, everything ran through him and he got a decent points return. And again, he's just 5 million. So that's my take on the options that are there. Let me know in the comments what you think you'll do with your team, how your team's going. I have got a fantasy league. I'll bring the thing up now. I'm in a few different leagues. This is the league that I'll give the code for. So we've got a fair few in there, but it's ES9B99. Anyone's welcome to join. And yeah, just have fun, everyone. Enjoy the thing, and hopefully the season kicks off with a bang tomorrow.